Today we're celebrating the magical season with these amazing Christmas crafts. I have handpicked the 3 most enchanting crafts that you can make using the same router template. So go grab your tools and let's start this wood story. Before we can use our router templates for this project, we have to do a little bit of prep work. When we are making this tray here, you can go ahead and use some of your scrap wood, just like I am. I dug through my pile and I determined that I had quite a bit of leftovers, probably from previous cutting boards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these pieces in order to create a surface that is at minimum the same as this right here, which is 15 centimeters, just shy of 6 inches. But more importantly, I need it to be enough so that I can have enough of these shapes in a row. And I've decided I'm gonna use 3 of them. So 3 of these combined is 31.5 or 12.5 inches. And so I want this to be the same. So that will take me to about here. So some of these pieces are definitely too long right now, but I'm gonna wait to cut them until I've taken them over to the planer because I do want to fix some of these. Some of these are a little bit rough. So I'll start by doing that just to get them nice and straight. And then I'm gonna glue them up and then we will be ready to start the routering for this project. I've prepared my pieces for glue up. And I did make sure that they are both straight on both the sides that are gonna get glued together. I'm not too worried about the height right now, except for the ones that were super, super tall. I just cut down a little bit more. I will be running them through my planer when they are done being glued up. Okay, now we're ready for the glue up. I've gone ahead and made the plans available on my website, along with the router templates used in this project. So go grab them from my website via the link in the description below. The board that we made is all dry and I took some time to make both sides flat again. I unfortunately had a little bit of a shift during my glue up, so one of the sides were no longer straight. Normally you'll end up having one side that's nice and straight and then you can just run it through the planer, which would make it a lot easier. But regardless, it is now back to the state that it was before, and as I was mentioning earlier, this is really no different than making a cutting board. This is a cutting board at this point. But we're of course trying to make a snack tray. So I have my 3 templates that I've decided that I want to use, and you can pick from any of the different icons that are available. I've chosen a bell, a boot, and a star. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna line it up like this, and then I'm going to attach it with some double-sided tape. And then the actual board itself, I will also put some double-sided tape underneath, and then I'll put this on top. And that's just gonna help keep my piece in place, because if I go ahead and I use clamps, then it's gonna be really hard for my router to get all the different grooves and nooks because it's gonna keep hitting that clamp. So that's just a way that you can speed up the process. I'm using a handheld router and a templating bit to remove the inside material. A sharp and clean router bit is going to give you the best results without too much burning. And going slow and going into the wood and only removing 1 layer at a time is also key. Now the actual depth is up to you, but make sure you don't remove more than 3/4 of the total depth of your piece. So I had a bit of an accident while I was actually just going to the washroom. I don't have a washroom in my shop. And I went inside, and on the way in, I decided I was going to shake off my sawdust from my head, my hair. And because I have long hair, I took off my ponytail, and then I head butted up and down to shake out all the sawdust. And then I decided to do it a second time, but I didn't realize that my dog had come and run right underneath me, and I ended up actually headbutting him. It was a pretty good one, and I have it all on video, so here you go. You can take a look at that. Not my proudest moment, and I actually feel terrible for my dog. He's okay. I'm also okay, but as you can see, I have quite the new addition here to my forehead. So I've been icing it, and I'm taking it slow, not doing anything too crazy, but yeah, good one. Good way to add a conversation starter to your forehead. And I think the real lesson here is never leave your shop, because that's the dangerous part. If I'd stayed in the shop, I would have probably been fine. I would have been in my usual alert mode, but of course, as soon as I leave the shop, that just went away. So rule to self, never leave the shop. All right, so it's all routed out now, and we are ready to take off the templates. But before I do, let me just show you what it's looking like. So this is basically what we got. And the depth obviously is a little bit dictated by how thick your wood is. You do want to leave at least 1/4 of the total width of the wood, so that when you're routering it out, that it's not so small that it's going to break through. So I went through it with my regular router templating bit. It looks great. And I did finish it off with just this bowl bit that I have, which left just a slight corner groove. And I don't know, it's like a bit of a personal choice whether or not you like that or not. It kind of just frames it in a little bit, but it did help clean up most of the edges as well. But let's take off this template now and see what it looks like. And with the inside done, I cut the tray to its final size. I also added a bevel to the sides using my table router before sanding it down to 220 grit, making sure to water pop the final layer. The final step was using food safe oil. My favorite is walrus oil, but let me know in the comments below, which one do you prefer? And with this snack tray all oiled up, we are going to move on to our second project, a Hexagon Lantern. And you guessed it, we're once again going to be using our router templates. We are going to be using 6 different ones of our router templates. If you only have a few, you can of course also do the same ones, just repeat them over and over. That effect is also great, especially if you have 2, you can kind of do every other. Regardless, with getting started with this project, what you need to do is actually cut the angles first. And we are going to be making some 60 degrees angles on here, which means that you need to set your table saw to 30 degrees. And by doing that on each side, you're gonna have them all be able to connect together as a hexagon. We will need to just make it really nice and straight on the one side first. So I'm gonna cut just one straight edge on both of these first, and then I'm gonna make the miter on the other side, and then I'll go back to that other side again and make the other miter. You'll see what I mean as we go along. With the angles cut on each side, I measured the length for each piece, which I decided to make the same as the router template, which happens to be 15 centimeters or just shy of 6 inches. I cut 6 of these for the hexagon that we're creating. At this point, it's always a good idea to do a dry fit to ensure that the angles are right and that they all will connect before we move on to the routering. I used double-sided tape and a scrap board to place below the piece we're routering out. This is because we're going all the way through the wood, so I don't want to ruin my work surface. Now, we're going to be working our way slowly down. And looking back at my routering now, I realized that I made it harder for myself than it needed to be. All you really need to do is route at the very edge against the template and work the bit down a little bit at a time. This way, the very inside of the wood will come out as one final piece versus having to worry about removing all of the inside material as well. So that's just a little time-saving trick for you, as you will be cutting out 6 of these. Once they're all cut, Align the pieces and add painter's tape to the side that will be on the outside. And then flip all of the pieces over carefully. Now you can add glue to the grooves and then roll them all together to connect with a final piece of tape. To make the bottom, I added a straight edge to 2 pieces of offcuts. I used some painter's tape to hold these 2 pieces together. They are not yet glued together. I then placed my hexagon on top of this wood and traced the shape in the position as shown here, where the middle is being centered. Then I cut the angles on my miter saw. Now these are, as you may have guessed, again 60-degree angles, so you need to set your miter saw to 30 degrees. The last part is cutting the sides to the correct width. This can be done on the table saw as you still have a nice straight edge to work from. With all the cuts done, double check that it fits before proceeding to glue the 2 pieces together and allow it to dry fully. I decided to add a little extra border to the top using some more scrap wood. First, I trimmed this wood to the size that I wanted, which was about 1/2 inch wide. Then I cut 6 pieces with the same 60-degree angle, and the miter saw was once again set to 30. Now note that the length for these are the same as your actual hexagon pieces. So for me, that was 10.5 centimeters. These pieces were all glued to the top, but you could also use brad nails if preferred. Going back to the bottom piece, now that it's dry, I wanted this piece to extrude a bit for a visual effect. So I marked the wood around the halfway point, and then I added a few nails. Then I added glue and set the lid inside, and the nails ensure that it won't go all the way into the lantern, thereby creating this effect that I'm going for. The nails can then be pulled out once the glue is dry. I did a bit of sanding and then decided to spray paint it gold. And while allowing it to dry, I jumped on to project number 3. For the third project, we are yet again using one of our router templates. And this time I'm going to be using my Christmas tree. And I just have a random scrap piece of wood right here. And we're gonna make a candle holder out of this. And what I've decided to do is I'm going to resaw this in the middle. You can do that on a table saw or on a bandsaw, or if you just have 2 thinner pieces of wood, that also works. Or worst comes to worst, if you have 2 of these, you can plane them down. So lots of options for making it thinner. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half, and then we are going to router out the middle right here. I'm going to put my Christmas tree like that, and we're going to router out the inside. And then we're gonna cut this to size afterwards. And then at the end, we're gonna add a little connecting piece, and the candle will sit in between those 2. I had to switch out my piece of wood that I was using because I realized that it wasn't quite large enough, because I do want this piece right here to be fully where the line is, because this part will be covered up for us to glue it together. So you will need a piece that's at least 5.5 inches so that you get that lip. But you need about 1 inch in the bottom for these 2 in order to connect with each other. So make sure that you leave that much. It doesn't matter if you go all the way up, as long as obviously you have some area at the top so that when you start to router that it's not gonna splinter. You do wanna leave probably about 1/2 inch here as well. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually going to use some double-sided tape on the inside to put these back together like this, and then I will router these at the same time just to save some time, because I can go all the way through like this, and then we'll disconnect them and we'll have 2 shapes ready to go. So this time I don't want to spend all my time routering out the inside because essentially I'm trying to cut out all of this at once. So what I'm going to do is I have put my my bushing back on here, and I have I think it's either an up cut or a down cut spiral bit. I'll look that up and show you right here. And what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to go through all the sides right here, but I'm just going to cut it. That way I don't really have to focus on the inside. So I'll just start slow and work my way down, but essentially all I have to do is go on the outside, and then in a couple minutes it should be cut out and be ready. Somehow I missed filming the actual routering, but as mentioned, just by going around the edges with your router, you can pick out the inside pieces pretty easily, and it makes for a lot less sawdust. Just make sure to go down slowly. Don't try to do all of it at once. I used my cross-cutting sled to cut the pieces to final size, and then I found a scrap piece of walnut that I am going to use as the in-between piece. I also added a hole to this piece right in the middle. This is for a candle to sit into, but please do me a favor, don't use real candles. This is for pretend candles only. It is wood after all. Trim the inside pieces to be the same length as the outside pieces, and then just add a little bit of wood glue and glue it all together and clamp until dry, before finishing it with your favorite oil. And with that done, we now have 3 simple projects all made using the same router templates. And now for an added bonus. The templates that we use today can also be used to make these beautiful Christmas lanterns. The way to produce those is the exact same steps as making the Halloween lantern. I'll leave the link down in the description, and you can also see it right here. To get the plans and router templates for any of these projects, go grab them from my website via the link in the description below. Thank you so much for following along. I'll see you soon in the next Woodstory.